Our wagon slowly creep, tents are erected, it's time for sleep. Well, fuck it, no need to heed. The hell with caution, increase the speed. PCP, best man, antidepressant pills. Everything spills into one pot. I'm sucker punching and suckers I'm punching. Squeezing cocksuckers, don't hear the bones crunching. Lied to her face just to get my dick rolled. 15 minutes later, tell her hit the road. Graduating college, the world rests in his hands. I woke up to the feeling of getting my dick sucked. We ate together, talked and giggled. My dick was harder than a pickle. We got a place for ya, never will ignore ya. Got a hot plate and a drink, we're gonna pour ya. I'm probably gonna burn for this, ain't no lesson to learn from this. There's nothing I'ma earn, but it sure is fun. Screwed up like Scooby-Doo, but with Shaggy we best of friends. Now ICP for him, without me, for me ain't no without him.
Well, we now have the final card of Insane Clown Posse's second deck of Joker's cards, and I've been looking forward to talking about it since I heard it the day I got it. Shout out to commenter Bevanwall9739 for giving me a heads up when it was released. I bought it immediately. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about and either haven't seen my previous video on ICP or don't have 2 hours to catch up with it, and another bit of time for the additional information from the commenters in a follow-up video, let's do a bit of quick catch-up. Insane Clown Posse, the duo of Violent J and Shaggy 2Dope, is a horrorcore rap group that created a mythos to go with their music known as the Dark Carnival. The Joker's cards are major characters and beings in the Dark Carnival that took the guises of staff or main attractions, while at the same time being symbolic of a judgment of your soul or trial of your life. If you want a deeper look into the lore and mythos, I wouldn't mind more views on my previous video about them. In the end, ICP is best described as a musical version of 80s and 90s slasher horror flicks, with a lot of the dark and gallows humor that was involved in those movies. It's not the only thing they do, but it's a good expectation of what they are. You'll catch on that there's a deeper meaning and sort of guidance behind their songs and albums, especially after the song Thy Unveiling.
The message is singing with an envelope most never picked up on. We snuck them in subliminally with that wicked shit along. Truth is we follow God. We've always been behind them. The carnival is guiding them. Juggalos find them.
That was the moment the first deck of Joker's cards was leading into. So in my video talking about them, I wondered what the second deck was leading up to. Now just because they seemingly made it clear what they're about that first time around, it doesn't stop me, you, or anyone else from finding other meaning in their music. Which is what art partly is. Something we can find comfort and meaning in, even if it's just our own way of seeing it. So what you're probably thinking, knowing this, is why bother saying there's a second deck of Joker's cards and announcing that there's a future third one? Why not just keep numbering everything? In my first video about Insane Clown Posse, because I count the commenter contribution video as the second, I theorized that there was something different in a meta context for the second deck. And we'll talk about whether or not my theory was right, if it came close or whatever. But first the question we should answer is this final card a proper finale, a nice capstone to everything? Is there an overarching idea that we're now seeing that goes through the entirety of the second deck? Something in this final album that makes us look back to what came before and find new meaning in it, or find hidden connections that are easier to see? Or is there the idea that there's a sort of cynical, we can do whatever we want, nobody's going to call us on it thing here. Now, I'll say now that there's about 3 things that are an overarching context to this album, either in terms of how it relates to the entirety of the second deck or just what it is on this album alone. Part of that's going to be the style of music, and we'll discuss that first. Before that, though, I want to say again, getting into this, that this video and nearly all of my other videos are not trying to say that you should like what I'm discussing. In this case, you should not feel pressured, no matter what I say, no matter what I present, to like Insane Clown Posse. But you can still respect and find inspiration in people and things, regardless of being good or bad. Well, hell, sometimes the bad stuff is what inspires people and creators even more. They kind of look at it and go, well, I can do better than that, or I can do things differently. With that said, let's get into the part that some people might find boring, and talk about, with my uneducated ears, how there's a difference in style of music for this album and the Joker's cards as a whole for this second deck, and have this discussion set up what we're going to be talking about later as what the context of the album as a whole is. Now, there's been either an evolution or experimentation with their music styles through this second deck of Joker's cards. To my uneducated ears, it especially started around the time of the Missing Link albums. And if I picked up on it, then I'm pretty sure there's plenty of other people out there who figured this out a lot sooner than me and probably noticed it on albums way before this one. And before going further, I will say that the Naught is one of my favorite Joker's card albums. This album was one of the first times in a while that I've listened through just about the entire thing straight through, without any real hang-ups on any of the songs, with exception to the flashback songs, but I'll discuss those more later. Similarly to how I felt with Bang Pow Boom, but the most recent album they released that I felt this way about was actually Phantoms, which was sort of a side attraction EP album released a little bit after the Missing Link albums. And speaking of the Missing Link albums, that's when I said in the first video that I was starting to feel a little meh on the songs that were on the albums. But there still were some favorite songs of mine on those albums, chief among them I See the Devil on Missing Link Lost, and Mr. Whitesuit on Missing Link Found. Not the only ones on those albums, but examples. And this isn't anything new to artists of any sort. Given enough time, they will want to try to experiment, try new things, have new and fresh influences in their music. And that's not a bad thing. We might not like what the new or experimental stuff sounds like, but we won't know if we like the new stuff unless they try it. And if you're wondering why they didn't do this experimentation on the side albums instead of making it a part of their main releases, well, I think they wanted it to be heard. And believe it or not, some of the side albums still have some of the more experimental songs on them. I never thought I'd hear ICP singing an 80s rock ballad called 80s Rock Ballad, and it being actually halfway decent, at least in terms of matching the tone of an 80s rock song. But to now give the setup for what we'll discuss later about the Naught itself, the album, is a conscious return to that old style of energy and presentation they had on the old albums, while at the same time not discarding the new stuff they've tried. Now, Mikey Clark returned to work on this album, however, apparently halfway through or something he had to move his recording studio, so they gathered up all the other producers that they worked with on the second deck, and almost all of them got together and they were able to work on at least one song on this album. And considering what I mentioned earlier about the style of the music and how it feels, again, it seems like the producers aren't the ones that would... If the music sounds like it used to, or whatever, that shows that these producers that came back aren't one-trick ponies, so to speak. They have varied styles and sounds that they can do, which I think is a talent and skill that needs to be given a thumbs up to. But that is what the setup is for what the music means on the album in terms of the greater context of the Naught. 3 of the songs on this album, the intro, which is what opened this video, and 2 songs specifically called Flashback, reuse lyrics of the previous Joker's cards in this second deck. The producers are being drawn in from this second deck. What we're seeing with all this background I'm giving you, and from the album's presentation itself, with the inclusion of the 2 flashback songs, and as well as the song Everybody Dies, revisiting the instrumentation from Everybody Rise, what we're getting is, deliberately or not, the album being an example itself of a reflection and remembrance of one's own life and accomplishments. And to be clear, while I understand the context of the flashback songs, I personally feel like we were robbed of 2 songs that could have been on there. And that's probably going to be my biggest complaint about the content of the album. Kind of a blessing to it as well, but the first time I listened to it, I ended it going, wait, that was it? I thought there was more. Can I have more? If somebody wants more, that's a good thing. But at the same time, I shouldn't want more because I feel like things were missing. Now that brings us back around to the Naught itself, and not just the characterization of the Joker's card as an entity, but also what the themes and metaphors about it are. However, I think that's going to be best kept for afterwards, toward the end. I'm sorry to say, but there's a lot to get into with it. And so, while we wait for the main event to open, let's go visit some side attractions. And so, in the spirit of Halloween, let's share some creepy, spooky stories. Yeah, I know what day it is, but I'm still calling this a Halloween episode because I'm a stubborn son of a...
Sitting front row at the chicken show. So who's going chicken hunting? We's going chicken hunting.
A commenter wondered why I didn't bring this up before, and I thought there wasn't a lore significance to it. But rethinking things, I believe I might be wrong about that. Chicken Huntin' and its remix are songs about Violent J and Shaggy heading out and going to kill some chickens, which is their slang term for bigoted racist rednecks. It's pretty much the start of whenever you hear them use the term chicken in other songs going forward.
My daddies were a 2-headed freak show. Mama, a fortune teller, Esmerella Zeller.
This is kind of repeating something I said in the commenter contribution video, but I'll bring it up again. In at least 2 songs, it suggested that the fortune teller of the Dark Carnival, or at least a fortune teller of somewhere, was Violent J's mother in the mythology of the songs. Now, of course, their history and biographies within their songs are constantly changing, and it might feel minor, but it is an interesting way to incorporate more aspects of carnivals and carnival employees into the music they make.
He's Joey the Butcher.
Joey the Butcher is about a butcher in a shop that's located in hell. And since it's hell, the only thing the starving damned souls can eat is the bodies of other people. Therefore, Joey the Butcher gets a line around the block constantly because he's the only one who can cook the food in a way that people would want to eat it. Or at least make it more palatable.
How did I become a shooting star?
Super Duper is about a man who wakes up one day to find out that any and all maladies he may have had are gone. And as he progresses through the day, he discovers that he has superpowers. He uses his super speed to get to work 15 miles away in 10 minutes, his super strength to rescue a man getting crushed by machinery at work, and discovers he has the power of flight. Through the rest of the day, he decides to go fight crime, but really can't find anything of note. So he puts his skills to the best by just picking up abandoned cars and taking them down to the junkyard. But after he goes to sleep, with thoughts of super plans for the rest of his life, he wakes up to discover all of his superpowers are gone, and he has to accept living a normal life as everybody else. And if you ask me, there's probably a message here about using your talents and skills as you have them before you lose them. Triplex is an interesting one. The song itself is specifically about a man who has multiple personality disorder of some sort, and is 3 different murderous psychopaths in one body. The first one is exceptionally misogynistic and exclusively targets women, the second is cannibalistic, and the third is... well, he's got some issues about his own gender and gender identity of others, is the best I can put it. I'm not going to claim that this third person is closeted anything, because I have no idea what the intention of it is, or even if I would be correct in saying any of that any further than I already have. However, a strange connection that the song has is that in their early days, before they became rappers, Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope were actually in the independent wrestling circuit of Michigan. As I said in the first video, this is where they became friends with Rob Van Dam and Sabu. And rest in peace to Sabu. Another person they knew at the time, though, was another wrestler named Triplex, which is how I'm assuming it's pronounced. And I believe the song may be referencing them with the name. The Great Malenko was actually a reference to another wrestler named the Great Malenko as well. So it wouldn't be the first time. And as an aside, if you want to see some more wrestlers doing some work with Insane Clown Posse, outside of looking up some of their time in WCW and WWE back in the 90s, then check out the music video for How Many Times. The only name I recognize is the Honky Tonk Man, but some of you old school wrestling fans out there might catch on to more of them.
I know it seems absurd, I can't be touched nor felt, I'm never sensed or smelled, but I know I'm real. I just fucking know I'm real.
Mr. Nothing Man is one of the songs where the horror comes from an incredible amount of tragedy in it. And it's one of my favorite songs they've made, however it's also one of the rarest singles they've ever released. The song is about somebody who cannot interact with the world around him at all, called the titular Mr. Nothing Man. However, one day he comes across a woman who's actually able to see and speak with him. And while they have no way of actually physically touching each other, they still spend a lot of time together, with Mr. Nothing Man finally finding companionship. However, when it becomes apparent that his inability to interact with anybody else is because he's a spirit, she climbs a fire escape. And as he originally believes that she's joking, she declares that she's proving her love for Mr. Nothing Man by leaping off the building in hopes of it becoming a spirit that will join him.
I tried to scream my rebuttal, out came a whimper so subtle.
And the song ends with Mr. Nothing Man begging for God's forgiveness as nothing rises from her body.
Dead Kelly, why do you cry? Death has you good, but you never will die.
Dead Kelly is a song that's about either an undead or just plain dead woman. Taking the lyrics on their face value, she is aware of her death, she's undead, and she has all these issues about her that she generally doesn't care about. However, there's also the possibility that the singer is simply projecting what he thinks she thinks onto her, and while she still may be a zombie in that situation, it's entirely possible she's also just plain dead, and he views her as a zombie. As part of the lyrics say,
Kelly likes being buried under my shed. Kelly don't care cause she's already dead.
and yes, I know this is not the first time that a dead girl or a zombie girl has appeared in ICP songs, but the other ones didn't feel like they had much of a discussion to have with them.
Let me tell you about cinnamon, Miss Pigtails. Fake eyelashes and press-on nails. Met her on some Instagram, flim flam.
Cinnamon Pigtails is about a really ugly girl that catfishes Violent J. Not much else to say except that it's some of the funniest lyrics they've had in a while, if ever.
That filter must have burned 1,000,000 gigabytes before that mug got any likes. Softy Pillow Man ass. Softy Pillow Man ass.
Softy the Pillow Man is about a weak, pathetic person. And while the song does not hold back in all the insults that's given to them, and quite a few of them being humorous, this is one of my favorite songs on the album, after all. It's entirely possible that the song is taken not just as a warning against people becoming somebody like the Softy Pillow Man, but it opens up by saying that there's one in every team and every crew, suggesting that even if you are, the weakest, not as tough or good as the rest of them, there's still a sort of acceptance going on because you're still a part of the team or crew. And let's remember that just because you're on the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, doesn't mean you're pathetic or horrible. If you're the weakest person in a group and you can bench 275 while the guy right above you can do 280, then you're still benching 275. Okay, I think it's time for the main event now, because if I try to keep this up, I'm going to wind up burning my chin or something, so let's make our way there. And now the main event opens. So we're left with the question, what is the Naught?
The meaning of the Naught, it's nothing.
Okay, well that was easy. Too easy though, don't you think? The Naught is actually two different things, as most of the Joker's cards typically are. The Naught is a physical metaphor of the nothingness that awaits us after we die, at least in the beliefs of some people. And this is something they may have been planned since way back in the Muddy Death Pop, where if that Joker's card killed you, you were said to have experienced the Big Blackout.
And when everything goes pop, you will experience the sudden loss of all senses! The Big Blackout!
Now in that context, it might have just been the light switch flipping off and you dying and, you're dead, there's darkness around you, and then you're waiting to be judged or whatever for the afterlife. I saw somebody on TV Tropes put up something that said the Naught was limbo. That's not what I'm hearing in the lyrics, I'll just say that much. Limbo is something, it's somewhere, it's some sort of existence. The Naught is nothing. Nothing exists. You don't exist, everything about you didn't exist, everything you've experienced, seen, all that doesn't exist. The only reason the lyrics keep saying you when they describe what it's like when you're in the Naught is because they have to have some sort of identifier, but in truth there is no you. The Naught is something that can keep you up at night if you think about it too much, and for some of us it probably already has, we just weren't thinking about the Naught. When somebody says, oh, it all doesn't matter, we're going to be dead, there's nothing waiting for us, why bother? You not mattering doesn't matter. That's how deep the rabbit hole goes on this. Think of all the tiny things that scientists have looked at and researched. When they talk about all these waveform particles, and then they look out at the universe and talk about how big it is, and how they theorize how it's going to die in the future. Everything in that scale means nothing when the Naught is involved. Like some of the lyrics imply to think of it in the way as, everything is retroactively erased. You didn't just have a life, your parents didn't have a life, their parents didn't have a life. History didn't happen, the future didn't happen. It's one of those things that it feels so simple to say and talk about. But the more you try to talk about it, the more you explore the ideas behind it, you start having this feeling that actual nothingness is something beyond that we can either understand or are willing to understand. And you can give credit to ICP for this if you want or not. Like I said, this is something that keeps a lot of us up at night when we start thinking of it like this. But to just go ahead and quote what they said about the album and their marketing, if there's no afterlife when you die, were you ever really alive at all? And let's think about how it's portrayed in the imagery of it as well, because like the Wraith, it's an aspect of death or dying. However, where the Wraith was pretty much just the Grim Reaper, waiting for your time, waiting to guide you after the end, the Naught is given the image of a predator, something that you feel is constantly chasing after you. Its gaping jaws evoke the image of a shark, something relentless, remorseless, and uncaring. And considering what we just went through with thinking about pure nothingness as something that's terrifying, it makes sense that the physical form of it, or whatever form this is of it, should have a terrifying visage about it as well. This is actually making me recontextualize why everybody was so pants-sweatingly scared of the nothing and never-ending story. So now that ICP has reminded us what keeps us up at night sometimes, Does this mean that they've pulled an about-face and they no longer believe in religion or the afterlife, or what they said in the first deck of Joker's cards? Well, let's compare a single word that didn't show up on the Hell's Pit album. On the Hell's Pit album, second part to the Wraith Joker's card, the word juggalo was never used, specifically because Violent J didn't want to see any juggalos in hell, even just the word. However, juggalo is said at least once on the Naught album. The one time I caught it was in the song Throw 'Em Up. So if the Naught after death is so terrifying and something that they don't want to have happen to people, why bring up juggalos? Well, it's because ICP has said in the past that even though they have spirituality and some sort of religion and belief in the basics of creator, punishment after death, heaven and hell, not a specific religion but just a generalized view of things, they still aren't against other people's beliefs, faiths, and religions. So what they're doing here, and I consider it to be deliberate on their part, because they went out of their way to make sure it was never used in Hell's Pit, by bringing up the word juggalo on this album, they're effectively saying that it's okay if juggalos out there believe that there's no afterlife. And by acknowledging that, that brings us to the final song on the album, and what the overall message for this Joker's card and the second deck has been. Now I'll discuss what we're all probably thinking about the song in a moment, but this is where everything ties together now. This final song on the Naught album is about living your life to the fullest, because there might not be another side. Or, to reverse it a little bit, to live your life to the fullest even if there is another side. In my first video, I theorized that the first deck and the second deck were different in the following way. This is where the difference between the decks comes in, at least in my view of things. The first deck was about judgment after you die, or how your actions lead to your afterlife. The second deck seems to focus more on how you live your life, and make it better or worse. All of the cards have always been warnings, but these seem to focus more on your time on Earth, and less about what comes after. And it looks like I wasn't that far off. Whether deliberate or not, the Naught album can be taken as a look back to reflect and celebrate what ICP has done through the years, especially focusing on the second deck. The second deck has been about how you live your life, with the Naught capping it off about why you should live your life, how you want the best you can. And this is a lesson brought on by the beliefs of those who don't believe in an afterlife, that our lives are all we get. The Naught is ICP in some form or another saying that not believing in anything doesn't make you bad or wrong. Some juggalos are going to go to the Naught instead of Shangri-La, but the carnival will still welcome them, either as a supernatural location, a form taken by whatever god or religion you're a part of, or just as a collection of people that find themselves drawn together, even if not by ICP's music, just drawn together by anything in general. So now that the meaning's out of the way, let's talk about that music, shall we? The first deck of Joker's cards was effectively capped off with Thy Unveiling. And after the first few minutes of leading into and revealing the message of the song, it turned into what felt like a big show-stopping number that they'd been holding in for 6 albums. I was not expecting the capstone of the final Joker's card in the second deck to be a full-on cover of Toto's Africa. Or a cover of anything else, really. Now, ICP has already done plenty of cover songs. They've released a cover album, and on that cover album, one of the songs they covered was a children's song. Most of it done straight. I mean, everybody does cover songs at one point in time. We saw what happened with Johnny Cash with the song Hurt. Toto has released a cover album. And to be clear, I'm not saying that ICP does cover songs better. Well, except maybe for Let's Go All the Way. I remember being underwhelmed by the original version of that song. But all that said, none of it's an excuse, and it still feels underwhelming, that the big finish to the final card of the second deck is a cover. It is, in my opinion, a good cover, but it's still a cover. Now, ICP's lyrics on this song are almost all different, and the music of Africa definitely fits the message that ICP is trying to give here. Something uplifting and encouraging, which is probably why they decided to sample Africa in the first place. But it still feels like I'm singing along to Africa more than Insane Clown Posse, regardless of the lyrics. However, there is something that will influence how I feel about this song going forward. And this is something that I actually spent a few weeks after the album was released trying to figure out an answer to. So the question crossed my mind whether or not they actually talked to Toto directly about what they were using the song for. And that led me to doing research on Africa, the meaning behind it, or generally speaking, lack thereof. There's inspiration for the lyrics, but I don't think there's actually been an ironclad meaning given to it by Toto, because from what I'm understanding, they didn't even think the song was going to be popular. However, I came across an interview that said that one of the members of Toto said that when they look back to Weezer's cover of Africa, they either didn't think much of it now or actually regretted allowing them to make the cover, because the person that was being interviewed said that they felt, after a few years thinking on it, that Weezer was only in on it for the money. And so knowing that, and knowing that ICP likes to discuss things with the people they get in contact with, I had to know, did ICP contact Toto directly? Does Toto know how Africa was used on this album? And if they do know, what are their opinions on it? I could not find anything about that, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be because a lot of circles that ICP are in aren't crossing over into the circles that Toto are in. If I can discover for certain whether or not Insane Clown Posse's mindset for this song was out of respect to the music, or if they were just pulling a Puff Daddy, to quote Celebrity Deathmatch on this.
Once again, he's using other people's records to make his hits.
And if Toto know the song was used in this way, and if they do, don't, or are neutral in how they like the song being used in this fashion. I will respect it a lot more if I ever find out that, Toto gives it a thumbs up on their end as well, or even just a passing meh. I don't want to hear that behind the scenes the song has some issues with it. And I guess the truly final song on the album is, I believe the official title is the Hearst Song, or something like that. I've always known it growing up as the Worms Crawl In song. It's a damn creepy send-off, and I don't know who sang it. I can't find information on that. But I would not be surprised if it was Violent J's daughter, Ruby, who has appeared on albums in the past, including singing an entire song on Willoughby Rag's Magical Bag of Poop, called Neat. So I guess the only thing left to ask is what's coming next. They're clearly not finished with their plans for upcoming albums. Plans for the third deck are still mentioned in interviews and on this album itself. And quite frankly, I get the feeling they'd pull an Orson Welles and record from their beds if they had to in order to get that third deck made. However, I personally think that what they may do is take a step back from the Joker's cards and do something like The Tempest, which was a do whatever we want album sort of deal. Something to, as they said in the Calm EP album, letting the wagons get off the tracks for a little bit. And that's probably something they should do, a sort of vacation for their creativity. Meanwhile, I heard that there's an animated series for Homestuck announced, and I don't think ICP would be against having their music show up again for that, like it was in the web series. Even if it did trigger a massacre and cause a lot of things to go bad, simply because somebody linking miracles as a joke wound up insulting an alien race's religion. Though Betty Crocker might take offense at being depicted as a despot that rules the world and kidnaps children to turn them into evil witches. Actually, I think I got that backwards. I think the kid was kidnapped first, became a witch, and then became Betty Crocker to conquer the world. Yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about with Homestuck, those were some of the simpler, less confusing and complicated examples I could have discussed. In the meantime, this is the end of the second deck, and the end of this video. So let's all go enjoy our lives while it lasts then. And also stay tuned for when I update to Windows 11, have something go wrong with that, and I release a Christmas episode in February or something. Take care, everyone. Check out the people I talk about, give them a chance, and like and subscribe to them and me if we earned it.